School's Early Reading Workshop. The aims of this workshop are to explain how literacy fits into the early years foundation stage curriculum, to explore what literacy teaching and learning looks like within reception class and how we approach this within our provision, and to share some fun ideas of how you can help your child to develop their reading and writing skills at home. First of all, the early years curriculum. The early years curriculum, as you already know, is split into 7 areas of learning. These in turn are all split into separate strands. Our literacy area of learning is split into reading and writing. The early learning goal is where we expect most children to be by the end of the early years foundation stage, the end of reception class. And for reading, this statement it suggests that children read and understand simple sentences. They use phonic knowledge to decode regular words and read them aloud accurately. They also read some common irregular words, demonstrate an understanding of what when talking with others about what they have read. If children are exceeding this early learning goal and achieving above this early learning goal, then we expect children to read phonically regular words of more than one syllable, as well as many irregular but high-frequency words. They use phonic, semantic and syntactic knowledge to understand unfamiliar vocabulary, and they can describe the main events in a simple story they have read. So you can see the difference between these two statements is in the detail. For children who are achieving the expected standard, they are able to read some common irregular words. Those achieving above the expected standard are reading many irregular but high-frequency words. For those children achieving expected standard, they demonstrate an understanding of when talking with others about what they have read, but those achieving above can describe the main events in simple stories they've read. Here are a few examples of observations of children that have achieved the expected standard of the early learning goal by the end of reception year. So as you can see, a child approached the reading area and spotted a giraffe and read the sign next to him, "I am lonely, please read me a story," and sat down to share the book. This shows that the child can not only read the sign but also understands what it says because they followed the instruction. There's a child on the right-hand side who wrote an invitation to their teacher. The teacher replied to the invitation. The child was able to decode that the reply independently and read that. So that shows an example of how they could meet that early learning goal. The other strand is writing. Again, the early learning goal for writing is the expected level by the end of reception. So within this, children use their phonic knowledge to write words in ways which match their spoken sounds. They also write some common irregular words. They write simple sentences which can be read by themselves and others, and some words are spelt correctly, others are phonetically plausible. This doesn't mean that your child needs to be writing everything spelt correctly. It means they need to be using their phonic knowledge and making sure that those words are decodable. If a child is exceeding, they can spell phonically regular words of more than one syllable, as well as many irregular but high-frequency words, and they use key features of narrative in their own writing. You can see that there's not much extra on that exceeding statement, however, the difference is quite a bit. So to be able to use key features of narrative would be to do things using traditional narrative language such as once upon a time, to be able to describe things suddenly and using different words and vocabulary like that. The key thing for children achieving the expected standard is to be able to read and write read what they have written, and for other people to read what they have written. Here are a couple of examples of children who were achieving the learning goal by the end of reception year. So you can see here that the spelling is not perfect, but they are using their phonics to spell. So frog is splash in the water. So it doesn't make the most sense, it's not grammatically correct, but actually the spelling is there, the understanding is clear, and we can see that they're able to they're forming recognisable letters, and that they're using their phonics knowledge to write the sentence. Another one, I went to London, I saw, using OR, a dinosaur, I went to the museum, and you can see that they spell that phonetically. So reading at Bowerham. We love reading at Bowerham. We think it's one of the most important things we can do with our children. Sharing books and stories and rhymes is a daily part of what we do. This not only promotes a love of reading, but also an awareness of how information can be retrieved from text, which is key for the children to understand. We feel like it's a magical experience for both the child and their parent and us as educators teaching children how to read. At Bowerham, we respect and support early reading skills with a fun and interactive approach which kindles a lifelong love of books and the joy that reading can bring, which makes children phonically decodable readers. So creating that exciting atmosphere around reading means children are more likely to want to read. Showing that adults enjoy reading, enjoy books, enjoy the stories and what goes on in them is encouraging to our children. Jolly Phonics. So Jolly Phonics is a phonics scheme that teaches children the alphabetic code. Children are taught letter sounds in phases. The most common are taught first. So the sounds S, A, T, P, I and N are the sounds that are the first 6 sounds that are taught, and this is because we can then start sounding out and reading words. So you've obviously got sat pin there, you can do sit, you can do pat. There's all sorts of words that we can practice with there. Once the children have learnt the sounds and are becoming more confident with recognising common sounds, we teach them how to blend these sounds together to identify and form words. In order to blend efficiently, it's important to know the letter sounds fluently. This is why in Phonics Sessions we're constantly revisiting the sounds we've already learned, making sure we've got a really quick recall of those sounds and the children recognise them. We teach 2 phonics sessions each day. The first is our reading session, which tends to introduce a new sound, and the second is where we practice writing that sound and writing words. So, within reading phonics sessions, as I've just said, we introduce a new sound. We use the Jolly Phonics book, which explains the action that goes along with the sound, but we also use our sound bag, where the children are encouraged to identify objects that begin with the sound. So, for example, if our sound is S, in our sound bag we could have a snake, we could have a sun, we could have a child's name that begins with S, and all different objects that begin with S, and the children identify and really overemphasise that initial sound in this process. Within our writing phonics session, we focus on how to form the new sound. To begin with, we use large gross motor movements, and then we progress to using whiteboards and pens. So to begin with, we will be outside using the sand, using ribbons, and we're making those large gross motor movements to form those sounds before moving on to the more the fine motor of using the whiteboards and pens. We teach children how to form their sounds cursively using language such as leading lines, and we use our flick at the end to show that we've finished our sound. This helps us when we come to join our letters together, that they've got that process there and they know how to form these sounds appropriately. When we teach children how to write, we use the tripod grip. So we encourage children to hold the pen in their hand, in their chosen hand, in a secure way towards the tip of the pen to make sure they've got the best control of it possible. During phonics sessions, we also introduce tricky words. These are words that can't be sounded out, and they're words that we just say. We just have to know them. And the children, there are a set of tricky words associated with each phase of phonics, and we work through those with the phonics sounds. Here is a link to a Jolly Phonics video which shows you as adults the actions that go along with each sound that we're introducing. We will also be filming our own videos to go out to you where we can introduce these sounds as well and show you what one of our phonics sessions would look like. So blending. The first starting point for helping your child to blend is allow them to hear you blend. So when a child begins to read, they first identify the sounds in the word. So say the word is cat. Your child might be able to see that the sounds there are 3 sounds and they are k, a, t. Your child can see these sounds but not necessarily realise what they hear when they say the sounds all together. So being able to hear you say the sounds repeatedly will help your child to be able to blend. Once they hear you say the sounds, they're ready to try blending for themselves, and they might need help to remember what sound each letter is. They might need help and really overemphasising those sounds to begin with before it becomes more natural to them. It might be that you find you're near enough saying the word for them, and that's okay. As long as we still break it into the sounds, it can take time, and that's not a problem. At this point in the year, our children are only just learning sounds. Lots of our children are only just learning sounds. Some of our children are already blending, which is fantastic, but lots of our children are just learning sounds, and that's okay. And we're practicing those sounds, making sure we know them, making sure that we know them really well before we start blending. We use strategies such as sound buttons, which I'll show you an example of towards the end of this PowerPoint, and bouncy blending to help them. There are lots of fun strategies out there, and we'll be sending home booklets to help you with these as well. So it's essential that the children can hear the individual sounds in words, especially for writing. We call this segmenting. So if a child comes to writing a word, we talk about the sounds we can hear. So again, if the word is cat, we'll say, what is the first sound you can hear in that word cat? And we will really overemphasize that sound until it becomes, again, more natural for the child. We make sure we're overemphasizing lots of sounds so that they can hear them. We use our robot arms to break up these words, and we will use a robot arm strike every time we say a sound. So we've got k, at, and with that my arms are going. Initially, we encourage the child to hear the first sound of the word, the initial sound, and see if they can identify that. Some children struggle with this, and again, that's okay. It's something that we develop and we work on. And then we begin hearing the sounds in the simple CVC words. So lots of the words that your children will be coming home with in the next few weeks will be CVC words. Will be 3 sound words. So things like cat, dog, sit, sat, pat. Those kind of words will be coming home, and that's what we'll be practicing reading and writing. We use Phoneme Frames, which again we'll show you towards the end of the slides, which is just 3 boxes that help the children break up those sounds. So they've got 3 sounds to write, 1 in each box, and that will help them to identify if they're not sure of a sound or not sure of the order of the sounds. Writing, and I've just spoken about writing briefly. Once your child hears the sounds and knows how to write them, they can begin to write independently. Initially, they will not spell every word accurately, but that's okay. Please encourage your children and praise them for having a go and using their phonic knowledge instead of worrying about getting it right. As I've said, by the end of this year, our children are expected to be able to use their phonic knowledge to spell, not necessarily spell words correctly. It's brilliant if they are, and they can, but it's not a worry as long as we're using our phonic knowledge. We want to encourage them to write what they want to say and not just the words and sounds that they know. So we're encouraging our children to think and have a go all of the time. So just a little bit about what we do in school to support the learning of reading and writing. Our children take part in 2 Phonics Sessions every day. The first session focuses on reading, and it focuses to begin with on those first sounds that we're introducing, and later on, once they've mastered the sounds, it will focus on blending the sounds together, reading words, and breaking those words down. The second session focuses on writing. Again, initially to be writing those sounds that we've learned, and then as the children become more confident, writing whole words and even sentences. In literacy, we have an adult-led activity which takes part in small groups or one-to-one throughout the week, which tends to be related to the interests of the children. And we have lots of literacy activities around in our provision areas where we encourage the children to carry on practicing their phonics skills and their phonics knowledge throughout the day. Adults will challenge children in provision with the letter sounds they have been learning in phonics. We listen to your child read at least once a week, and we read stories together every day and several times a day, which the children love. Just some things of how you can help at home. Allow your children to think independently, not just saying to them, right, you can only write this word because you only know these sounds. As we've just said, let them practice and have a go at writing different words, even things they don't know. That's okay to have that go and practice. Encourage them to always have a go and not be too nervous about trying. We learn from making mistakes, and that's okay to make mistakes. So knowing that that's okay is fantastic for your children. Letting them hear you model blending and reading. Make sure your child can see that if you set up a situation where they can see you're struggling to read a word, that will really help and encourage them. Playing fun activities and games at home. Reading together on a daily basis. Bedtime stories, school books, information books, shopping lists, street signs. Anything you can think of that you can let your child have a go at reading, or you can model reading to them, is really good practice for them. Sharing stories together is vital for your children being able to enjoy reading, love reading, and be able to actually read themselves. And providing opportunities for them to write for a purpose. So things such as labels, shopping lists, birthday cards, invitations, all those different things, allowing your child to have a go at doing that would be really helpful for them in developing these skills. So a few activities here you can try at home. As I said before about the sound button, so if you can see in the top left corner the word cat with magnetic letters. Underneath there's a little dot. These are our sound buttons, and what we do is we put a sound button under each sound. As we press that sound button, we say the sound. The children will be using these in class, they'll be used to using them and be able to teach you how to do these. There will be lots of opportunities for children to write using different media, so be able to write in sand, glitter, shaving foam, and have a go using their finger before they start writing with pencils and pens is a really helpful tip for them. You can see the Phonics Baskets here. This is identifying initial sounds. So you can see here they've got the sounds S, P, C and D, and a child has gone around and gathered lots of different things that start with these sounds. So identifying those initial sounds again is really important. And there are lots of little fun ideas here of things you can do with things that you will have more than likely have at home to help your child practice these reading skills. And finally, helping your child to become independent, resilient learners is key to helping them grow. Let them explore, make mistakes, have a go, and most importantly, have fun along the way. Thank you for listening.